Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our quarterly webinar, this one to talk about the November packet. We're going to wait just a few minutes to make sure everybody has time to log on. So we'll start in about a minute or two. Okay, so good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for one of our quarterly webinars. And this one will focus on the November 2025 policy update packet and to get a little bit more knowledgeable about what is in the packet. Next slide, please. So before we get started, we'll look at our agenda. We're going to start with some housekeeping and presenter introductions. Then we're going to do a fun practice poll before we get to a more formal poll. We always like to start with something fun to make sure we're kind of all in the groove. Then we will have a little bit of a gamut overview before getting into our kind of the heart of the discussion about the policies themselves and the updates we made. With ample time, we hope for questions and answers. We've planned for it, so we hope we'll be able to accommodate all of the questions. Then we will finish up with a poll number 2 about evaluating the webinar, and then we will have time for some additional questions, hopefully. Next slide, please. So in terms of housekeeping, just a little bit about the questions and answers and a link to the presentation. So you can see from the little chart that we're requesting that you submit your questions through the Q&A feature. You'll see an X through the features that we have turned off. So if you could focus on that Q&A feature would be great, because that's where we will be looking for your questions. And the questions will be answered either in that feature itself or in writing, or it would be live by one of our presenters. And please know that everyone attending will receive a link to the video as well as the slide deck, so you don't have to worry about that. Next slide, please. So in terms of presenters, we have Dustin Bindreiff, who's a senior policy manual writer. We have Ray Purcell, who's a governance and technology specialist. Josh Daniels, who is the head of our department. He's of Policy and Governance Technology Services. And then I'm Barbara Laifman, the Director of Policy Manual Development. Next slide, please. So here's our kind of fun practice poll. And the question is, what is your favorite season for pie? Is it fall, pumpkin, apple, and/or sweet potato, summer, blueberry, cherry, and/or peach, or neither? I prefer birthday cake. So let's take about 10 seconds and then we'll look at the results. It's always kind of fun to see the results. Okay, maybe we can share the results now. All right, so it looked like by a pretty good majority, the favorite is fall, followed by summer, and lowest is the birthday cake. Okay, thank you for participating, and hopefully we're all set now for next slide, please, for our real poll. Yeah. So for anyone who's attended before, this is going to be a little repetitive, but it does really help us to prepare for the webinars. So it's 2 parts. Have you previously attended one or more policy update webinar? No, this is my first one. Yes, I've previously attended 1 or 2. Yes, I previously attended 3 or more. And then the second question, what is your role in your district or county office of education? Board member, superintendent or administrator, executive assistant, or you hold another position. We'll wait about 10 seconds again. Okay, and now would be a good time if we could show the results. Okay, so it looks like about half have, this will be the first webinar you're attending, so thank you for joining us. It looks like still a nice number, about a third have previously attended before, so that's great to hear, and 3 or more, even up to 19%, so that's great that you're finding that helpful. And in terms of role in the district, mostly executive assistants. I'm glad you're finding them helpful, and some superintendents and some board members. So looks really good. Okay, next slide, please. So I am now going to introduce Ray, who is going to talk a little bit about how to access through Gamut the update packets.
All right. Good morning, everyone. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. So there are a couple of different ways to access the CSBA update packets. Whether your LEA has access to Gamut Policy Plus or just Gamut Policy, we will look at where to find those update packets in either site. As well, the update packets are separated between the district policies and the COE policies, so we will also look at where those are. With this slide here, we can see the view from the Gamut Policy site, which will be for those districts with just the Gamut Policy subscription. To get to this area on the policy site, first you will log in, then you will see the policies drop-down menu here, and from this drop-down, you will select Policy Updates. Then on the left sidebar there, you can see the update packets are sorted in chronological order by year. On the screen, we can see guide sheets and update packets. You are free to click into those documents that you are looking for at the moment. Next slide, please. For the COEs that are logging into the Gamut Policy site, your view will be slightly different. You will see the county update packets. The process to get to these packets is the same. You will sign in and then use the Policies drop-down menu to select Policy Updates, and then make sure that you are clicked into the correct year on the left and locate the specific packets and documents that you are looking for. Next slide, please. If your LEA has a subscription to Gamut Policy Plus, then you will still use the Policies dropdown on your Gamut site, but here you will select CSBA Communications. And we can see on this screenshot that once you are clicked into this page, you will want to be clicked into the CSBA Policy Updates tab on the left, and then you can see the update packets to the right, organized by month and year with the most recent on top. To get into that update packet, just click on the title, and you will enter the update packet, which has all of the updated policies and all of the supporting documents that accompany the packet, such as the guide sheet, checklist, and mandated list. This page also has the Copy All Documents button, which allows you to pull the whole packet into your work in progress area for editing. Next slide, please. For COEs with Gamut Policy Plus, the process will be largely the same, except you will notice on the left there, it says County Office of Education Policy Updates, and this is where those packets exist for COEs. The district and COE update packets do come out on different dates. Often the COE update packets will come out approximately 1 week after the district update packets. All LEAs designated Gamut contacts will receive an email when their policy update type is posted on Gamut. Next slide, please. A new feature from the software developers will be rolling out over the weekend. The Compare Documents feature allows users with login credentials and policy manual access to visually compare policies. This includes comparing your adopted version to an updated CSBA sample policy, your adopted version to a draft, or your adopted or draft language to any document. The Gamut Fall webinar series, the Gamut Fall webinar series has returned. We have already had 2 webinars, and we are having our 3rd and final webinar tomorrow, also hosted by me. This one will go over the entire Gamut Policy Plus site, as well as tips and tricks to maximize efficiency in your site. If you are interested in registering for this webinar, you can visit csba.org/webinars, or look for a link below in the chat here. If you are interested in the recordings of our last two Gamut Fall webinars, please reach out to our email at gamut@csba.org. Next slide, please. We host weekly drop-in sessions on the Gamut team every Wednesday at 2 p.m. This is where subscribers can ask our Gamut support team technical questions and receive live assistance. This upcoming session will be a special drop-in session, which is scheduled for Tuesday, November 25th at 2 p.m., and it will focus on the new Compare Documents feature. Register for the November 25th drop-in at csba.org/webinars, or again, you can possibly find the link below in the chat if you'd like to attend live or receive the recording afterward. Next slide, please. If you find that your LEA is behind on the updates to your manual, we have a couple different options to support you in getting caught up. We offer a policy manual review and a policy development workshop. The policy manual review is an audit where our policy team will issue you a report of which policies need updating based on CSBA's most recent updates of those policies. The policy development workshop is a more intensive process where one of our policy manual consultants will travel to your LEA and work with your team to go through and develop your board policy manual so that it is fully updated and is customized to fit the needs of your organization. Next slide, please. Gamut offers Policy Plus, but we also offer Gamut Meetings, which is a module that we can slot right into your existing Gamut Policy Plus site and allow your organization to build and manage your board meeting agendas within one Gamut site. There is also cohesion between the Gamut Policy Plus module and the Gamut Meetings module that allows you to easily pull current and draft policies into your board meeting agenda for review. There are many other features in the module as well, but one other feature that speaks to the connection between meetings and policy module is the search feature, which allows your organization to search through all of this data, all of the data from your policies module and the meetings module with one search feature, because it's all stored in the one Gamut site. Next slide, please. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ray. And we will move on now to our sample policies. And first, we'll start talking about the basics, just some underlying principles. Next slide, please. So these few slides, for those who've attended before, will be a little bit of a review, but I think always helpful to say the premise. So when we talk about board policies, we're talking about the way the governing board legislates, and it articulates the policy direction of your district or county office of education. Then we have administrative regulations, which are the way in which the superintendent implements the board policies. And they provide details and procedures, processes, and they do need to we need to make sure that they're not inconsistent with the applicable and the accompanying board policy. Keep in mind that this structure might be a little bit different to county superintendents due to the differing dynamics between the county superintendent and the county board. Our exhibits can be very helpful. They provide forms, notices, and other implementation tools, and again, needs to be specific and in line with the accompanying board policy or administrative regulation. And then we have our board bylaws, which are really basically board policies that apply to the governing board itself and rules and procedures that the governing board must follow. Please keep in mind that we use policies, and maybe your districts and county offices do too, as kind of an inclusive term for all of these documents, for the board policies, the regulations, the exhibits, and the board bylaws. So during this webinar, we may do so, and in your communications with CSBA or maybe even amongst yourselves. So please keep that in mind as we go along. Okay, next slide, please. So a little bit for how we structure our manual. It's a numbering system that ranges from the zeros to 9,000. And we do specifically have a gap in the 8,000s for our just in case. And only real important thing to point out in terms of this webinar is that the 2000s, I think we have some in the 2000s, are not applicable to county offices of education, again, because of the differing dynamics between the board, county board and the county SU. And then just so you can get a sense of number, we have over 800 sample policy documents. Remember that this includes the policies, the regulations, the exhibits, and the board bylaws. So we have 550 code numbers, but since many have more than just one document, such as very commonly and most common is to have a board policy and an administrative regulation, we have more documents than numbers. And one, I believe it's Uniform Complaint Procedures, has a BP and AR and two exhibits. So um, some have all four. Well, actually, not all four because it won't also have the board bylaw in there. But anyway, so and try to keep this in mind when we go to our this structure when we talk about concepts and roles, our policies on concepts and roles that we're going to be talking about because it pertains. Okay, next slide, please. Few more things to know is that these policies that CSBA produces are samples, and they serve as a starting point, but really important for each district and county office of education to review each policy and customize them within the confines of the law to the needs and desires of your district or county office of education. And it's really an extremely important role that governing boards and county boards of education play. Keep in mind that our policies have gone through legal review, but they do not constitute legal advice. So when you need to seek legal advice, best to go to your either CSBA's county office of education or county legal services and district legal services or your own district legal counsel. And also that they may become quickly out of date. We try very, very hard to keep our policies current, but with the number that we have and how quickly laws and guidance can change, we just always want to put that qualification in. We have notes that are embedded to provide context and additional guidance. It oftentimes will be a note that kind of describes the body language that follows, but please know that the note should not be included in the language that is adopted by the board. Next slide, please. So now we're going to get a little bit into the highlights of the policies themselves. Next slide, please. And just to give you an idea of the structure of our discussion, we are going to be covering in these general categories or areas of concepts and roles, interdistrict attendance. Next slide, please. Parents' rights, responsibilities, and involvement, instruction, and governance. Next slide, please. So we do have these four policies were included as part of the November update packet, but we are not going to be covering them specifically in this webinar. We do have slides about them in the slide deck, and you're welcome to ask questions, but for purposes of time, we are not going to be covering them in terms of presenting them during this webinar. Next slide, please. So we're going to start with the topic of concepts and roles. And as you can see, we have a very similar policy on this for the one. Remember when I told you about the structure? So the 1000s, the 4000s, 5000s, and 7000. This is basically the first number in each of those different groups. So 1000 deals with community relations, 4000 personnel, 5000 students, and 7000 facilities. Next slide, please. So just a little background to think about with these policies. As you know, policy sets direction for the entire district or county office of education. And these concepts and roles policies establish overarching themes for each of the policy sections that we had looked at. So like I said, so like the 1000, it's the first one in the whole range of 1000 policies. So it kind of establishes the themes, very general for that whole section of policies. And it's really important for the board to be able to articulate the mission and purposes, which can be reflected in these particular board policies. Next slide, please. So for all of these, because you'll see it on each slide, we updated them as part of our regular process to regularly review documents that otherwise would not need to be revised due to what I had spoken about before, law, changes to law, regulations, new guidance, and such. But it's an important part of our process in order to keep all of our documents timely as best as we can, even when something does not cause us to say, oh, we have to update this particular one. So that's in the realm of why all of these were updated. So in terms of 1000 for community relations, the board policy was updated to add a reference to board bylaw 9005 governance standards. Next slide, please. In terms of the 4001 on personnel, the policy was updated to clarify that it's academic achievement, personal growth, and well-being of district students, in addition to the success of district programs that hinges on district personnel. We did also reflect a California Labor Management Initiative guidance document, and we did kind of beef up, include a little bit more about labor management collaboration and interaction. Next slide, please. In terms of our board policy 5000 regarding students, it was updated mostly for timeliness. We did also include material related to school safety and to reference applicable related board policies and administrative regulations. Next slide, please. And then in terms of 7000, which focuses on facilities, we talked a little bit more about, we really kind of added a board responsibility, which is to provide facilities that align with district needs. We had already had information about providing safe, healthful, safe, and adequate facilities, but this is important to add. We did also add that the best use of facilities may be reused by a third party or lease or sale. And we added a little bit of information about developing a facilities master plan. Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, any questions related to these four policies discussed? Okay, it looks like there's a question. Are we required to adopt all of these concepts and roles policies? No. These are not mandated policies, so no, there is not a requirement to do so. It's if you would, it's more based on if you would wish to have a policy that kind of encompasses and is an overarching document for that section of policies. So I think that should answer that question. Don't see anything else yet come in this area. Okay, if anything else does, so don't worry, we can take a look at it at the end. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I am now going to pass it along to Dustin, who is going to talk a little bit about interdistrict attendance.
Thank you, Barbara. Yeah, we had a couple revisions to a couple important policies related to interdistrict attendance, and I'll tell you more about that. Next slide, please. Interdistrict attendance has been an important area in the past couple years in policy, and that's because interdistrict attendance policies can impact budgets, staffing, student achievement, and much more. So they have a pervasive impact on your district. Additionally, equity and access to interdistrict transfers is a priority, and out-of-date or non-compliant policies and practices in this area can create some legal exposure that it's important to be aware of. Finally, SB 897 updated a number of codes related to interdistrict attendance that we want to talk about further. Next slide, please. First, I want to show you how we updated the BP to clarify that both this board policy and the regulation apply to students transferring into the district and out of the district. So if you have questions about either of those aspects of interdistrict attendance, this is the policy you'll want to go to first. And then SB 897 extends the District of Choice program indefinitely, requires some accounting of requests for Districts of Choice transfers to include foster youth and students experiencing homeless status. Finally, 897 provides that compliance of all provisions of the School District of Choice program are subject to an annual audit as required by law. Next slide, please. In the administrative regulation, SB 897 expands the prohibition for districts of choice from targeting communications to particular neighborhoods or audiences. Requires the district to, by January 15th, notice the district of residence of the number and names of students from the district of residence by school and grade level that are requesting to be transferred for the following year. So that language can get a little tricky, and you may want to look at it more closely in the policy. And additionally, 897 prohibits rejecting the transfer of foster youth or students experiencing homelessness, in addition to students with disability or English learners based on transfer requiring districts to create a new program to serve the student. And next, it, the SB 897 expanded the second priority for transfers under District of Choice programs to include foster youth and students experiencing homeless. Next slide, please. A couple more changes related to SB 897. We expanded the required notification to parents and guardians when the number of students requesting to transfer exceeds the district's capacity to include the notice. You will have to include that the number of students exceeds the specific school or program to which the student applied. Next, we require that SB 897 requires the district to respond to requests from a COE to provide data regarding the number of students or transferring into the district within 30 days. And we expanded the authorization for districts of residence to limit the number of students who transfer out of the district if their most recent budget certification by the COE is qualified. Finally, SB 897 requires districts of residents to, by February 15th, notify districts of choice of the total number and names of students requesting to be transferred that exceeds the number of students for which the district of residence is authorized to limit transfer. So again, some of that can be pretty technical, and if there's some questions, we can try to answer those now, or you can ask them follow-up.
Sure. Well, why don't we take these now, Dustin, and then we'll, after we talk about the appeals, then we might have a few more questions about that. So let's maybe take one or two now, and then we'll go into the interdistrict attendance appeals. So we do have a question. Is there a list of items that we cannot require? For example, if an interdistrict student has excessive absences, can we not renew the interdistrict petition?
I may have to look more closely, but my initial thought is that wouldn't be a reason to. They're a pretty strict criteria of what you can consider.
Yeah. Yes, Justin, you're correct, and it can also vary depending on if it's a permit, if the student is coming in by like an old-fashioned permit, or if they're in the District of Choice program. But yeah, I think we would need to know the specific situation, and that's really the kind of thing you would want to discuss with legal counsel. Um, okay, we're going to finish up with the slides in this section, and then we'll take some more questions. So why don't we go on to the
Oh, I'm sorry. I
yeah.
forgot. Next slide, please. I was a little ahead of myself. And then a related matter that's becoming a particular focus is related to interdistrict attendance appeals, and this really impacts county offices of education that hear those appeals. So in this county office BP 5117.1, we wanted to first update the scope and add clarity regarding adding educational rights holders along with parents and guardians. Then we made some additional requirements related to the county superintendent of schools or the designee that when there's an appeal, they will need to investigate to determine whether local remedies have been exhausted and if there's additional information that's useful to the county board. Next, they want also the need to develop a form and process for parent, guardian, and educational rights holders to submit an appeal. And finally, we want to ensure that the notice to the county board's decision is appropriately delivered to parents and guardians, rights holders, and the district. Next slide, please.
Okay, now let's take a look if we have any additional questions on this section in general. The only other question I see right now is what is the District of Choice program? I can kind of start. So there used to be kind of like the old-fashioned permit where it would be one by one student at a time could transfer into another district. Basically, if both districts had an agreement and it was that permit was then approved. And then the district of choice program came into being where a district could choose to become a district of choice. And then by application from many, many students, they need to set certain limits. And there have been many more laws now that have come out to try to improve the program and to create it to only be a positive thing for all districts. So, but you can basically accept a bulk of students at the same time, and then those students are students in your district from the time they're in until they graduate. But like I said, there were some difficulties that arose and some challenges for districts because of this. Basically, a lot of times the districts that were not the district of choice. So new laws have been put in place, and they're constantly refining to make sure that it ends up being a good program for all districts. Dustin, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Not really. I would just suggest if a district or county office was interested in learning more or becoming one, to look at this policy, and because you do have to register with the superintendent of public instruction, and there's a lot more details in the policy and regulation.
Thank you. All right, so let's move on to our next slide, please.
Barbara, I think there's one more question or a few more questions
Oh,
on this
there's one more
topic.
question. Oh, sorry, I missed that one. It came in while we were answering. Okay, for notification of appeals, is it just the desired district and or the district of residence too?
I would have to check more closely, unless Josh, do you happen to know offhand?
It's both.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay, and then it looks like,
let me come on video. Sorry. It depends on the status. So if you're trying to transfer out of a district and that district has denied your transfer and that is appealed, then that district and the student's family would get notified. Um, but that has to happen first. So in that situation, it would only be the district of residence. But if it has been approved and that it's the receiving district that is um, denied it and the appeal goes up. I believe that even the district of residence gets a notice. They're not a party to the appeal, but they are made aware of what's going on.
okay, thanks, Josh. And it looks like another question has come in. An interdistrict transfer student will have to leave the country for 2 to 3 months. Do we drop the student and re-enroll them, or do they lose their enrollment? Does this fall under the discretion of the district? I would say, well, I mean, I think just general rules, which I'm aware of, like, so for the district of choice program, you would treat the student the same way you would any other student in your district. So it would be, I don't know what the particulars are of this case. And obviously, this is one you would probably want to discuss with your legal counsel, but the student could perhaps go into an independent study program or something like that. I'm not sure of any more specific rules that would govern this. Um, Josh, I don't know if you have any more input on this particular question.
No, it's a good question. Uh, my hunch is that you treat them like any other student, independent study, for example, perhaps for that period of time. But if you unenroll them, if they become unenrolled, then they would have to re-enroll. And I don't know whether their sort of interdistrict transfer permit for the year lasts for that year, or whether you have to sort of reapply. I'm not off the top of my head, but it's a good question.
Okay, thanks. So that's good. So Josh and I kind of had a similar response. Okay, next question. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about parent rights, responsibilities, and involvement. And if you were at our last webinar, which was in September, we kind of said that we were most likely going to be updating BPAR 5020 parent rights and responsibilities in our discussion about the U.S. Supreme Court decision in Mahmoud. And we did. So let's move forward. So we're not going to go into too much detail because we did do a lot of detail in September, but next slide, please, and we'll move forward with what we did. So, and first we'll talk a little bit about underlying principles. So it's obviously, it's kind of intuitive and maybe, not even worth mentioning, but always important to recognize that that parent guardian rights, responsibility, and involvement in their children's education is key. And we have an article which looked at some research and backs this up, an Education Week article, which suggests that parent guardian involvement leads to improved academic outcomes, positively impacts social and emotional skills, decreases instances of delinquency, leads to different outcomes depending on type of involvement, and leads to better outcome regardless of ethnic background or socioeconomic status. And these next two policies that we're going to talk about are mandated by state law, because of the importance. Okay, next slide, please. So we'll look a little bit at 5020. As I said, it was updated, the board policy was updated to reflect the U.S. Supreme Court decision in Mahmoud versus Taylor. Going to just briefly remind everyone of what that was about. And it held that the First Amendment prohibited districts and county offices from including LGBTQ plus storybooks as part of elementary school instruction without providing parents, guardians with notice and ability to opt students out on the grounds that the storybook substantially interfered with the religious development of their children. We also more closely aligned the language with statutory language about that the parent-guardian relationship with the schools is one of mutual support and respect, and specifically that it's the partnership with parents, guardians specific to their own children. We talked a little bit in there about FERPA, which is the Privacy Act, and the importance of that going out with parent guardian notifications. And we also brought into there the ability of the county superintendent or designee may, again, this is permissive, establish a parent center at the school when the school and or board feel that that would be helpful. Okay, next slide, please. We did update the AR too, again, to include the notification and opportunity to opt out required by Mahmoud versus Taylor. We clarified certain notification and information going out to parents, guardians about ability to opt out of other things, such as any psychological testing involving child and any assessment, analysis, evaluation, or monitoring of quality or character of students' home life. We also added, that the written notification be in English for parents, guardians when English is not the home language. And and then we also added, and this is an important one because we kind of expanded a little bit upon what the law says. The law kind of was saying the importance of parents, guardians supporting the learning environment, even at home, by monitoring. I think it said just TV. And we expanded that to social media and other forms of online entertainment viewed by children, since that's really what's happening in our day and age. All right, next slide, please. So just briefly about parent involvement, we reviewed this primarily to reflect the applicable California Department of Education federal program monitoring instrument. And just be aware that it's reflecting the 2024-25 one. The 25-26 is not out yet. We did reference the Department of Education Dear Colleague letter. We added some information related to parent advisory committees and English learner parent advisory committees, if you will recall, when appropriate, are required by in part of the LCAP process. And I believe too, part of for English language learners, there's a requirement separate from the LCAP. And about how the superintendent or designee's responsibilities regarding attending meetings of the PAC or LCAP. Next slide, please. Okay, we did update the AR to delete material about those committees, since we actually moved them from the AR to the BP, again, reflected the CDE's federal program monitoring instrument, and talked about some other things we included in terms of instructional coaches and professional development. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I thought we were to our questions. Okay, let's see what we've got. Okay, first question is, do these changes have differentiation on level of education for notification requirements? grade levels or age, for example. Okay, so I'm not for sure. I'm going to say how I'm understanding the question. I think it talks to about the notification requirements. I don't think that they're. Oh, you're probably referring to the Mahmoud. Um, I'm not sure what you're talking about. In terms of the notification, the general ones, I don't know about any grade level or age. I do know language though, like we discussed. If English is not the primary language, then that is really important to consider and to follow through with. In terms of Mahmoud, that notification, um, this is a very hard area of law right now because the case did not give a lot of instruction about implementation, except for that it's very fact specific. Really important to check with your legal counsel or CSBA's legal services. But it does appear that in making the decision, it could differ depending on grade level or age. But whether the notification can vary versus grade level or age is unclear. My recommendation, unless Josh has anything to add, would be to discuss this with, like I said, with CSBA's legal services or with your own legal counsel. Josh, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Nope, I think you said it well.
Okay. Okay, and then the question about the 2025-26 FPM instrument, we are not aware of when they're coming out. It seems to be a little bit later than typically, although last year was a little later too. Last year they came out in July. Typically they had come out in May, June. Last year was July, and this year they still don't seem to be out yet. And we checked recently, and our drafting, we're always checking. So as far as we are aware, they're not out yet. All right, next slide, please. Okay, I am now going to turn it over to Dustin to talk a little bit about our topic of instruction.
Thanks, Barbara. Next slide, please. So instruction remains an area with a lot that's regularly updated and impacted by policies. So we wanted to clarify district response and COE responsibilities for providing the required courses of study, which has regularly been updated and added to. And another important part of reason for these updates was to clearly communicate what courses districts and COEs offer to students and their parents and guardians, including the required courses and paths to graduation. Finally, consistent courses of study offered throughout a district and COE provide students the foundational knowledge and access to equitable learning experiences across the schools. Next slide, please. So there were a number of updates to BP and AR 6143 that we wanted to share further with you. In the BP, we updated it to add a small statement impacted by the U.S. Supreme Court decision Barbara talked about earlier. Additionally, it was updated related to Senate Bill 1137, which provides that prohibited discrimination includes discrimination not just because of one protected class under state law, but also because of a combination of two or more. Next, the BP was updated to clarify that the board adopt courses of study for elementary and secondary grades that are in addition to preparing students for the next level of study and employment. They include all the required instructional content. Next slide, please. There were a number of changes to the AR that I'll go through in these next couple of slides. So first, the AR was updated to reflect for students in grades 1 through 6 that instruction in cursive and joint italics is required. That when Spanish colonization of the California and the Gold Rush era include treatment and perspectives of Native Americans during those periods. Next, a couple more, the causes and effects of climate change and methods to mitigate climate change. And then finally, prenatal care for pregnant women. Next slide, please. The AR was updated to reflect in the courses of study for grades 7 through 12. The first update shows that personal financial literacy, which was required by AB 1871, is now required. We also wanted to again note that the Instruction is provided on Spanish colonization of the California Gold Rush era includes treatment and perspectives of Native Americans during those periods. Once again, similarly, that the causes and effects of climate change are included in courses of study. And then beginning with the 26-27 school year, the dangers associated with fentanyl use as a required part of health education for high school graduation. And then beginning with the 27-28 school year, one semester course in personal finances. And we updated this to add how the one semester course in ethnic studies may be fulfilled. Next slide, please. Couple more updates to the AR, and these center around Senate Bill 153, which requires at the beginning of the school year, the superintendent provide written notice to parents or guardians of high school students that includes distinct disclosures related to the California Guidance Initiative and filling out the FAFSA and contacting information for the California College. Finally, then this similarly required districts to advise each student in grade 11 to complete the grade 11 financial aid lessons on the CGI. Next slide, please. A couple more for you. AB 2165 requires the district or COE to provide student and parent guardians with specific information about being exempt from the requirement to complete the FAFSA or the California DREAM Act application. And AB 123 requires districts and COEs to provide each student in grade 12 with parent and their parent or guardian with information about potential eligibility for the California Kids Investment and Development Savings Program. Next slide, please. Then a couple changes here related to 6146 and the Certificate of Proficiency in High School Equivalency. In the AR, we updated to update the name of the proficiency exam to the proficiency program. We more closely align the language with guidance on CDE's California Proficiency website program webpage, and we deleted the criteria related to a repealed state regulation and instead aligned with the state law. Finally, the BP was deleted because responsibility for certificates of proficiency lies with the CDE and the State Board of Education. Next slide, please.
Okay, so we are going to see what we've got for questions in regard to this area. Okay, first question. Oh, I think it was just answered, but why are we deleting BP 6146.2 Certificate of Proficiency and not the AR?
The administrative regulation is meant to provide guidance to the districts. There are some requirements that principals notify students in 11th and 12th grade of the opportunity to take the exam, but the district really has no role in how that exam is administered or paid for or any of the aspects of the certificate of proficiency.
Okay, thank you, Dustin. Next question. You have 2 bullet points on your first slide for courses of study. 1, personal financial literacy, and 2, personal finances. Are these referencing the same requirement? I can take this one. So no, it's actually 2 separate things. One, the financial literacy one is one that's required in, I believe it's the social studies part of the general curriculum. And then the personal finance is actually a standalone finance course that's being required for high school graduation. So the personal finance course is for 9 through 12. The others are more general to, I believe it's both K through 6 as well as 7 through 12, but I would need to look back to make sure, but they are two separate requirements. Next question. What options do districts have to incorporate the new courses of study grade 7 to 12? Do they have to be standalone courses? The personal finance does. I believe the student can get credit for economics if they, through the personal finance course. And in terms of ethnic studies, I believe that too has to be a separate course, which I see just a quick question about, is it being delayed? The ethnic studies, it's really dependent on state funding, is what that one comes down to. Okay, I think there's a couple more questions, but we are going to take those at the end. So let's continue on and we'll go to our next slide. Okay, and I'm going to hand it over now to Josh, who's going to talk a little bit about governance.
All right, thank you, Barbara. Hello, everybody. So we have typically done a section on governance as part of these webinars. Traditionally, those have focused on the 9000s, the board bylaws. In this webinar, we realized that there were a couple of other policies that also relate to governance, even if they're not in the 9000s, and so we sort of threw them in all together. So that's why you'll see a couple of policies that traditionally we haven't included in this kind of section. So the first is Board Policy 2120 about superintendent recruitment and selection. Um, so this one, actually, I don't believe had been updated for a while. So we took a look at it, and we updated things related to what is the board's responsibility typically versus what it might delegate to a consultant or a search firm. We needed to clarify some materials around the contract, when you can vote on it, how you can vote on it, things like that. There is a new law, SB 521, that talks about you can't employ a person as a superintendent if they've been convicted of certain crimes in the last 5 years. So make sure to do your background check. And just generally, I'll say this is one of those policies that you pull out every few years when you're doing a search, but it is important you take a look at it, make sure that it does align with your practice. There isn't a lot of like legal requirements, but more sort of what you think how you want to do it. So just make sure that it aligns with sort of how you want to do this process. BP 7131, which is about relationships with other local agencies. This is actually an interesting one. So a lot of it has to do with building schools and local development. So for example, there is this requirement that you sort of can recommend measures for inclusion in city and county general plans about sort of how new developments will create and affect the need to build new schools. You're required to meet with local park and rec district to coordinate sort of new schools and recreation facilities. So it's important. Again, this is one of those ones that you may not use a lot, but definitely good to take a look at and make sure it's updated, just so that you're clear with what you're required to do. Now we're moving on to the more traditional sort of governance policies, board bylaws. So this is actually a policy about policies, a little meta for you. This talks about what your policy development process is, both for BPs and for ARs. When I was on a board, the board adopted the BPs and the superintendent adopted or approved the ARs. I know that there are districts out there where boards do both. So this one really needs to be modified to reflect whatever your practice is. It's written as if boards do BPs and superintendents do ARs, but that's because that's the general practice. But you should, take a look at it and change it to follow whatever you do. It beefs up some of the definition sections, differentiates between BPs and ARs, and then there was previously a section about monitoring and evaluation, and that was simply subsumed within the board policy section because it really is about board policies. And then in terms of closed session, so this is a fairly long one. It has two exhibits. It is really important for everyone to sort of understand what can and cannot be in closed session and also how to report about it both before and after. I'd say some of the more substantive changes, other than just sort of clarifying certain things, are one, under the Brown Act, every item on an agenda, you must be able to make public comment before or during the item. Since the public cannot be in closed session, the only time that they can do it is before closed session. So please make sure that you are including a public comment period before you recess into closed session. The change to this board bylaw follows that. There also was a recent AG opinion about who can be in closed session, and there is a limit. It's not just anyone, like the whole cabinet can come for the entire time. They really need to be sort of connected to the item. Now, there's some general language about it, and it can be interpreted different ways. But it is important that your board bylaw reflect that, and that you pay attention to who is in closed session, and that it's consistent with the language of your board bylaw. Um, I'll flag this because there are some board members, on this webinar, that closed session items for personnel matters apply to employees, but the statute explicitly excludes board members from the definition of employee. So a personnel matter about an employee, at least in general, is unlikely to be able to be considered in closed session. Now, there are other exceptions and, considerations for other people involved, perhaps in that matter, privacy, things like that. But the board member themselves is typically not a basis for a closed session item. Um, there are a couple of laws that have been passed in the last couple of years that this board bylaw now incorporates. One is the ability of student board members to make restorative justice recommendations for certain student expulsion and discipline matters. We had a separate bylaw about this that we updated, and this bylaw sort of references that. The other is an expansion of closed session for security and safety matters. That is, it's there. There's some things about like cyber threats and things like that, but it's there sort of in the details. All right, let me see if there's any questions.
We can start with one, Josh, while you're looking. So
Sure.
with the passage of AB 1390, will an update to Board Bylaw 9250 be released in the next set of policy updates?
So we don't commit to any specific policy in any particular release. However, just because things happen. However, I can say that we are very much aware of 1390. It is high on our priority list. And we are CSBA, so making sure that that is reflected in our latest policies is important. So again, I can't commit to it formally, but it's definitely something that we're tracking closely.
Okay, and let's just give Josh a second to see if we have any more questions on governance. Okay, it
I
looks
think.
like there's another one. Just to confirm for closed session, the whole superintendent's cabinet should not be in the closed session unless that agenda item pertains to them. That's the question. They should leave when they move on to the next agenda item. That would be my recommendation is to only have like the assistant superintendent or that it pertains to or that's in their realm to be in closed session at that time. Josh, I don't know if you would have any other different recommendation.
Yeah, no, I would say the same thing. Who needs to be in the room for a particular item, it, can be sort of perspective dependent. But I guess I would be intentional about it. Make sure that there's a reason for everyone in the room. I wouldn't just have a blanket practice of everyone is in and just sort of sits in the back and sort of does work. If they're not supposed to be there, if they're not really needed there, they should step out, and then they can come back in for the next item.
Okay. Okay. So let's keep moving on with the questions. Are executive assistants allowed to be in closed session? I believe they are. I think there's actually a law that suggests they should be in order to document what goes on in closed session. Josh, am I accurate about that?
Yeah, it depends on their role. If the executive assistant is the secretary for purpose of keeping notes, that's their role. I forget the exact term used in statute, but then yes, for sure, they're needed to be in there to, record the votes of what happened and things like that. But for example, if that's not their role, then, they wouldn't just sort of on the natural be permitted to attend.
Okay. All right. Are you seeing any other questions at this point for this section?
Um, There's just a comment that says, so for some smaller school districts, only the superintendent can attend. That may be true depending upon, if you're a single school district, superintendent principal, it may just be the superintendent. If you have an EA, I assume that they're going to be in there to take notes as we mentioned, but it may be that every item is just the superintendent and they're needed for every single, matter.
And could be if they ever need to, on particular items, talk to legal counsel. It could be their legal counsel too. Yeah.
I don't see any other um, question on this section.
All right. Okay. So let's keep moving then with our slides. Okay, so just want to show briefly, in case you're interested to look back, these are the policies, like I said at the beginning, that are part of the November packet, update packet, but we are not covering in detail in this webinar. Um, but we do have a slide on each. So I'll just show you where the slides are. Next slide, please. So here we have BPAR 1114 district sponsored social media, and feel free to go through, and it really just documents the changes we made to the AR and to the BP. Next slide. Here's our slide about design build contracts and there's just an AR for this one and what we updated the AR for. Next slide, please. 3470 debt issuance and management. And again, we are reflecting what the board policy was updated to explain. Next slide, please. And then 5138 conflict resolution peer mediation. And we did update this board policy as well. And feel free, if you do have questions, we're going to get to like the the end questions soon. So if you have any questions on these four, feel free to ask. All right, next slide, please. Okay, like I was just saying, almost time for questions. Next slide. Just a little reminder that we have now shifted our quarterly policy update schedule to a new schedule, and it's November, February, May, and August. And here we are at our November quarterly update webinar. And we made the change based on user feedback and to better align with the school year calendar. And just to keep in mind, so the next packet will be coming out in February. All right, next slide, please. And if you could please help by doing our last poll about evaluation of the webinar, it does help us. How would you rate this webinar? 5, incredible. 4, really helpful. 3, good enough. 2, barely okay. 1, not worth my time. Take a few seconds and then we will look at the results. All right, why don't we try to take a look at the results now?
The answers are still coming in.
Oh, okay.
Maybe like 10 more seconds.
Okay. Okay, so it looks like we had the large majority was in the 4, really helpful. So that's good to know. It looks like we have some incredibles, some good enough. And unfortunately, we do have a barely okay 1%, not worth my time, no one. So that's good. Well, we still need to try to do a little better. We try each time and we do take, comments. If you also have any comments you want to share with us about how we can improve, could always send them to us because we are trying to do our best to serve you. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so our final questions and answers. Let me see what we've got. We've got about 15 minutes. So does CSBA have a sample interdistrict petition form? Our policy group does not. I do not know, honestly, if our legal services does. So it might be worth contacting our legal services, CSBA's legal services department, or you can contact one of us and we can find out for you. But I don't know for certain if they do. I know we don't. We don't have an exhibit which has the interdistrict petition form. Okay, next question. For requirement by January 15th to notify districts of residents on the number of students requesting to be transferred for the following year, can you explain, as this population is often not finalized known until May, with families still requesting transfers into the district? So I believe this is just for district of choice. And I believe it's for the number. I think there's a deadline at the end of December for all the requests to be in. And that is the number that is being spoken to. It's the students who have requested by that end of the year date. How many are requesting to come in by district of choice? I don't know if anybody else, any of my peers have anything to add to that or any more knowledge than I might have given.
Not a lot, Barbara. There's some specific dates, and like you said, I think it for the District of Choice program, I'm looking at 48308, and those requests are due January 1st, and then there's some specific dates for responding. So it may be depending on what type of transfers or interdistrict things specifically the question relates to.
Okay. Yeah. And if you have further questions that we're not able to answer or we're not getting quite what you were wanting, please email us, policy@csba.org, and we will make sure to get the answer to you. Okay. Next question is a general question. What is the best way to search for updates on a particular BPAR if I don't know when the last update was made? If I look up a BPAR by the number, will it show when the last updates were made? Yes, it will. If you, assuming you can go into Assembly and into Gamut, then you, I know Ray can probably explain this really well, but it will show when the policy was first created and it will show when the last update was made. So, and if you need any help with this, if you email again, policy@csba.org, you know, we can find someone to actually help you go through the steps with you so you can understand how to do it. All right. Next question. Where are closed session minutes supposed to be kept? I actually am not aware. Our when I was a board member, we didn't take minutes during closed session. So Josh, maybe your district did.
So there's a few different things. Um, if the board takes a reportable action, then that should be reported out when you come out of closed session. Now, sometimes there's some caveats that, for example, if you enter into a contract and the other party hasn't or approved some sort of real estate deal and the other party hasn't approved it, you can wait to report it until the other party signs off. But you'd want to keep track of anything reported out. And then sometimes there are directions given by the board, um, to staff on, say, negotiations or what have you, right? So, and it's important to put that in writing so that the board and the staff understand what the direction is. Typically, it'd be the EA that keeps that in a confidential place because it's confidential information. Um, each district is going to have sort of their own, practice. But I would say, but you're not keeping like, detailed minutes of, board member said this, board member said that, but really it's sort of action minutes of a sort, so that you can be clear what the board has done in terms of following up and recording, when required to do publicly that direction.
Okay, thank you. So next question. Just to clarify, should the opportunity for public testimony or comments be agendized? We did in our district, we agendized it towards the beginning. If we knew we were going to have a lot of discussion on a particular topic, we would oftentimes also agendize it down there, or kind of in middle if we didn't know that we were going to, but we saw at the beginning of the meeting that we were going to have a lot of public comments on a particular item, we would just orally state that we were going to take those with the agenda item. So I think that's good. Josh, did you want to
Yeah.
add to that, or we're good to move on?
I would just add, I mean, some districts that take public comment on every single agenda item are not, don't will not put that as a separate agenda item. But you better be clear, you better be sure that it's in your board bylaw so that you are clear that it's there. You probably want to add some sort of notice in your agenda so that a member of the public who hasn't attended a meeting before understands how public comment works because if it's, are you taking public comment on every single consent item, or is it just all of consent? Just so that from a transparency and expectation perspective, things are clear. And as Barbara said, if you have a standalone item for public comment, you probably want to agendize that just for clarity, and probably before closed session, since you're not going to have an item by item. Opportunity to comment, but since it's just, no one can be in closed session, probably want to agendize before closed session. Again, not a requirement by law, but you need to be clear that you're doing it, be transparent with the public so they're aware of it, so that they do want to make public comment, that you can point to something in writing that says, see, this is how you would know that you can make public comment.
Okay, thanks, Josh. Okay. Next question. Our EA doesn't attend closed sessions, so how does she take notes about directions given to staff?
Uh,
Um,
oh, go ahead,
do you
Barbara.
want to take that one? No, 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 fine. Go ahead. Go.
Sure. Well,
Yeah.
whoever is the staff person for that particular item, they can take the notes. Um, but somebody needs to be clear what's being reported out. So that could be the board president, that could be the superintendent, could be the EA. For those districts that have internal counsel, the internal counsel can, take those things. But somebody needs to be tracking what is, for example, you report out a board vote, right? You got to report out who voted. So someone needs to track that so that the board president or whoever's the chair can read that when you come into open session.
Okay. Next question. I believe it should start with can a district be a district of choice or do the permits for interdistricts? I think the question is meaning, can you do both? You can, but they both have a lot of rules that apply. So I would just recommend working with legal counsel if you do it. But yes, it can be done. You just need to make absolutely sure you're following the laws for both programs because they are two separate programs. Um, Next question. When the policy refers to district of choice, is that only applicable to district participating in the district of choice program? Or is it referring to any receiving district? I actually just double checked when I saw this question. So the policies themselves refer to, and the AR refer to students transferring in and out. So it would refer to both the students coming in and the students going out. In other words, being the district of choice or the referring district, both. However, we do have it set up with options. So the option would really just be chosen by whether you do the permit applications program or the district of choice program. I hope that clarifies it enough. If not, feel free to email us and we'll be more specific with that answer. But in general, they apply to both the incoming and the outgoing district, the BP and the AR. Okay, next question, general question. If the district has policy plus, is there any additional cost to review the board policy as a whole policy audit? That is probably one more for Ray or for Josh. It's kind of out of our writing area and into a different area. So Ray or Josh, could you answer that question? If there's an additional cost to the whole policy audit?
Uh, yeah, there is. And we recommend that they reach out to policy@csba.org for specific details about the cost for their district. I don't know if Josh has more information on that.
Now you cover.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. So we're kind of at the end of our time here. We do know that there's a few more questions that we have not had time to answer. So please feel free to email us, policy@csba.org, and we will hope to be able to we will get back to you and hopefully we'll be able to answer the question to your satisfaction. Or anything that we did answer, but it wasn't really on point to what you were really wanting to know. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much. I hope for the most part it was worth your time, that you learned a lot, and that you have a great rest of your day.